I'm going to go over a clip from the HBO Max TV series Hacks. It just had, I think, its series finale. And there was an interesting incident there that I think highlights some of the issues with public health, with biosecurity, bioterrorism, law enforcement. And I'm going to use it to talk about those issues. So let's listen and watch.
Sucks that we don't get to go on the retreat.
I know, but honestly, I've been before, and it's like not that big a thing. You know, it's a lot of free food and fancy drinks, and sometimes they bring in exotic dancers, but you're allowed to go back to your room if you don't feel comfortable. This one's from me. Holy shit! Anthrax! Anthrax in the building! Somebody call Homeland Security! Are you serious, guys? What is wrong with you?
Yum. Pixie stick dust.
So what you saw there was what we would call a white powder incident. And these take on really special significance. And Jimmy, the character who opens the envelope, talks about anthrax. He mentions anthrax. He mentions calling Department of Homeland Security. So why does he do it? What's the background here? So I think if you go back to 2001 and think through this, you'll understand how important these issues can be. So just 7 letters mailed through the US Postal Service back in 2001 changed the entire way the country thinks about biosecurity, biological weapons, and bioterrorism. So what happened then? There were 2 waves of envelopes sent with anthrax spores in them. There were 7 letters sent. Only about 4 were recovered. Some were not recovered. It ended up infecting 22 people with anthrax, 5 of whom died, including US postal workers. This was using or weaponizing the US Postal Service to send a biological weapon. And I don't think it was something that people really thought very much. They didn't quite understand all of the mechanics there. So, for example, how porous envelopes can be and how they can cross-contaminate. So spores from anthrax could get into somebody else's letter or on somebody else's letter. When envelopes went through sorting machines, it would blow the air out of the envelopes, and that could aerosolize spores, infecting people, for example, at the Brentwood US Postal Service facility in the DC area. That really changed how we thought biological weapons could be used. And one of the things that happened after that is that it really set off a wave of these white powder incidents, most of which are hoaxes. But there's a couple of things to know about them. Number one is, they're not all, there's pixie dust in this scene, and you've got people telling you, oh, this is pixie dust, and they're eating it. So this clearly doesn't need to escalate to law enforcement. But that's not usually the case. Usually someone gets a white powder incident, they call 911, police, fire, hazmat might be dispatched, the FBI. That white powder envelope is then taken to a public health lab, for example, a state or a local public health lab by the FBI to test it to see what it is. So here you have public health, law enforcement, hazmat, all working kind of together to run down these incidents. And almost invariably, they turn out to be nothing. But the point is that they're very costly. They are very resource intensive when they occur. And I think that's something that's underappreciated, that these types of events can cost tens of thousands of dollars per incident, but they continue to occur, and they continue to need to be investigated because sometimes it might not be pixie dust. It might be anthrax. It might be ricin, which is a toxin that sometimes has been sent through the mail, including to President Obama, Senator Wicker, in a bizarre tale involving Elvis impersonators. That's a time for another video. But the general overarching point is that public health and public health preparedness costs money, and these types of things detract or distract away from other threats. So if they're off investigating some silly prank with pixie dust, they're not able to investigate an HIV cluster or an Mpox cluster, or some novel infectious disease causing meningitis in somebody. So just keep that in mind, that these things are not, even though this is a joke on a comedy and it works in that situation because it's a good resolution to it, the reality is if that happened in a mailroom and there wasn't someone there saying, oh, that's pixie dust, and then eating it right away, that would have triggered that whole cascade, which is very expensive, distracting, costly. And why? Because people have killed other individuals by using the mail with and mailing powders that contained anthrax, or tried to kill them with powders that contained ricin. So these are real issues that I think that the show is kind of highlighting, making fun of. But I think this is something that's important to keep in mind, that the whole apparatus that we have for biosecurity, bioterrorism really was ushered in after the 2001 anthrax attacks, which weaponized the U.S. Postal Service.